Hi, class. This is Dr. Morris Council, and welcome to Task 1 of your EdTPA Bootcamp. I'm going to get us kicked off by talking about understanding the focus learner and their strengths, interests, assets, and needs. We're not only going to talk about the focus learner, but we're also going to talk about why your knowledge of them is going to be critical to good teaching and obviously EdTPA. Now, before we get into that, I want to start by talking about these two assessments, your GACE assessment and your EdTPA assessment. Now, while at this point in your career, you might know that these are the two assessments you need to become a licensed teacher, what you might not know is what they're actually assessing. GACE assesses your content knowledge. So, do you understand methodology? Do you understand the laws? Do you know the pedagogy of a teacher? EdTPA is evaluating how you apply what you know. Now, I wanted to start there because the way you apply what you know and the way that a general educator applies what they know is completely different. General educators are tasked to facilitate learning, to make sure an entire classroom are learning the same objectives. As a special educator, you're tasked to provide individualized instruction and supports. So with that in mind, EdTPA wants to know how you apply that skill set with one focus learner. Now, what we have done at University of West Georgia is we have provided you with a lesson plan that really gives you some keys on how to better understand your focus learner. The strengths of the focus learner, the interests, assets, and needs. And we're going to go through each one of those individually. So let's start with the strengths. Now you see I have an image to the right of rose-colored glasses. And when you think about rose-colored glasses, you think about seeing the world in a positive light, being optimistic. And as educators, from a philosophical standpoint, we are trying to do the same thing. We always start by looking at student strengths. Because we know when we focus on their strengths, students tend to have better outcomes. Those can be academic strengths. So for example, your focus learner might have a very strong vocabulary, or they might be very fluent in math facts. It could be an executive functioning skill. So they might have wonderful time management, or they might have great organizational skills, or it could be a social strength as well. They might be highly motivated. We always want to base our lessons within the focus learner strengths when it comes to individualizing them. Another thing that we think about are our focus learners' interests. Now, there are two ways that we define interest. There's the noun, wanting to know or learn about something or someone. And then there's the verb, to excite curiosity or attention. So oftentimes we think about the noun and we stop there. We want to know about what students like outside of school, whether that be sports, music, games, art. We want to know that and incorporate it within our lesson. But I also want you all to think about what excites your focus learner's behavior. So that might be your focus learner might be excited by peer engagement or attention from the teacher. So how can you incorporate attention into your lesson and embed it to again get them to behave or to pique their interest, excuse me. They might be interested in tangible. So like they might love computer time. How can you incorporate their interest in computer time into your lesson to again further engage them? So you might say, oh, at the end of the lesson, I put in computer time as a motivator. They might be interested in escaping or avoiding an activity. How can you embed that into your lesson? So you really want to be thinking about not only the things they want to learn more about, but also the things that excite behavior and really try to pull those into your lesson in as many ways as you can for that focus learner. The next thing we want to talk about are your focus learner's assets. Now, there are two ways that we define assets in education. The first way is the macro way, the larger way we define it. And I have this image here of Superman versus Batman to really get us into a good versus evil type of conversation. And when I say good versus evil, I'm really referring to an asset-based mentality, so focusing on student strengths, versus a deficit-based mentality, which is focusing on students' weaknesses. Now, Boykins and Noguera have the perfect definition for this strength-based definition for assets. That they define assets as emerging interests and preferences, motivational inclinations, passions and commitments, attitudes, beliefs, opinions, self-perceptions, personal or collective identities, and prior experiences, knowledge, understanding, and skills and competencies. When asset-focused factors are present in the classroom, they are likely to lead to gap closing outcomes. So again, when we focus on student strengths, what they bring to the table, we will have better results with our students. Now, EdTPA defines assets in a slightly different manner. Now, I want you to think about assets in this way in terms of personal finance. So for those of you who don't know very much about personal finance, here's going to be like a quick, my version of a quick lesson. So think about personal finance in terms of assets versus liabilities. So the difference between an asset and a liability is an asset is something that is going to appreciate or increase in value, and a liability is something that's going to depreciate or decrease in value. The example that I gave the undergraduate students where a house is an asset is going to hopefully appreciate in value, and a pair of tennis shoes or a purse is a liability is going to depreciate, or a car is a liability that's going to depreciate in value. Things that appreciate in value increase wealth, and I want you to think about assets in terms of things that will increase your focused learners' academic wealth. So those things will include, say, a private tutor, or having a private occupational therapist, or having highly engaged parents. These are all assets that increase your students' academic wealth. So that's how I want you to think about and define assets in terms of EdTPA, particularly in this planning task. So finally, we're going to talk about needs. So let's say you have put together the perfect lesson plan that incorporates student strengths, interests, and assets, but you find there's still a barrier. It's because we have to address student needs. Now, at this point in your programs, you are masters or becoming masters at identifying measurable objectives. So it's easy for you to identify where a student might have need. But in terms of planning, I want you to think about needs as what are the pre-skills or acquisition skills that my focused learner needs to be able to access my lesson. So for example, if I were to be giving a lesson on handwriting, but my focus learner struggled on pencil grip, that would be a need that I needed to identify during my planning period so that my focus learner could access my lesson. Think about needs in that way. So why is all of this important? What you're looking at now on the screen is simply a cycle for teaching, and this is also EdTPA cycle for teaching. You're familiar with this: planning, instruction, and assessment. Now, the reason that this is important for you all is EdTPA, they dive a little deeper when you read into their handbook. So if you look at number 2, you will see that the instruction part isn't just instruction, but it's instructing and engaging the focus learner. And what we know is if we're focusing on students' assets, interests, strengths, and needs, we are going to be doing a better job of not only instructing, but engaging our focus learner and doing it in an individualized manner. So that is why it's very important that we understand our focus learner. So that is our quick run through of how to capture everything you need to know about your focus learner. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to leave for me before we shift gears, I would like for you to email me at mcouncil, that's MCOUNCIL, at westga.edu. And I hope that you found this first screencast useful, and now we will transition to the second.